Hello guys, today I'm going to be taking you through how I created this trash cleanup game in Unity using Coplay, running on the Gemini 3 Pro model with the increased accuracy mode enabled and auto approve on normal. And I'll be showcasing all of this using a pre-recorded video that I made. Then I'll be taking through all the steps that I took. Okay, so here you can see I created my first prompt that I entered in. I wanted it to create a FPS controller that uses the WASD and mouse to look around rigid body capsule collider to create a vacuum tool that is attached to the camera. When holding left click, it will create a vortex like force to pull in objects, and then it will capture said object that is closest and snag it to the player, and then on right click will blast it away. And I told it to use the fixed update all for accuracy and to make sure all objects don't clip in colliders. Okay, its first thing it does is set up the task list and creates a tag to main player. Here's the default object setup. Just ran it. It sets up the camera, creating the scripts for the vacuum and the player movement. It's adding said components to the player. Checks for compiler errors, and it finished initial setup. Now it's checking screenshot to look if everything's done. Here's everything that it did. So it did set up the player, created the vacuum tool, environmental, mind physics, and the environment and the setup. Firstly, I did just do firstly I told it to go through and debug the console, all the problems there are. So it's going to go through that. It used the old input system that is no longer supported in Unity, and it's updating the scripts to use correct things, and it's checking now compiler issues. So here you can see it. So you can see that it was using the legacy Unity input system, which is no longer supported, updated all of it to support the new system. So then for my next input, I told it to for when I tested it, the mouse movement was very slow, so I told it to increase the speed and the movement of said mouse for the view of with the player. Updates the player controller script, checks for compiler issues, and basic update, and fixed it so it is the mouse sensitivity is a lot better. So the next thing I gave it told it to do is to set up the procedural spawner for the room and set up like trash throughout the room that has been created, and then create a disposal zone where you will shoot the trash and it will be disposed of in an incinerator, and then create UI and set up a win condition when cleaning up all the trash. First sets up the task list, creates the scripts for the system, the incinerator script. Now it's going to populate the map with the trash, which is at this point still a cube, as it's just it created a particle system for the incinerator, setting up all the objects around it, setting up the scene, so the spawning of the objects and the perimeter, the max radius of where everything can spawn. Now it's just making sure everything is working properly. With the screenshot, you can see the task list it created and it's finished. It's fixing fonts in the scene, checking last screenshot to see if everything is correct. So here's everything it did. It's set up a procedural spawner that spawns 30 to 50 trash every time the game starts. And it creates a disposal zone, the incinerator. When the trash goes into it, it destroys the object and then takes down from the score or the amount that's left. Added a UI system that just updates, tracks the amount of objects in the scene, and then also the win condition and everything. And then obviously the win condition is set up as well, so that when all the trash is destroyed, you will win. So I was just doing more debug with it, which is very simple. You can just click the debug with Coplay when there are errors in the console, and it still had some of the old input system, so it just removed it. So the problem was when picking up the trash and locking to the player, it was covering the full screen, so I told it to change the size of the trash when picked up. Sets a task list, updates the vacuum tool script, which handles the locking to the player. So it added logic to organize the scale to make sure it doesn't cover the camera of every object it picks up. Now, I decided to change the ones on the ground as well because they were also way too big when spawned, and it changed the size by half. So now I added an asset pack for the Fire VFX just to add it to the particle system it's set up. Here you can see setting it up. Removes the old particle system. Setting up the new one. You can see it took the VFX prefab, set it up in the scene, remove the old particle system, and there you can see it working. I told it so it wasn't properly, it was clipping a bit too much and wasn't properly showing the flames. So I wanted to fit the whole incinerator and actually properly show, you can see it. Creates a task list and just change the scale. I did end up manually moving it a bit to look better. So now I added an asset pack for a space gun to the scene so that it can be the gun the player uses as like the vortex cannon to grab the objects. I asked it to set it up with on the player. 707 steps complete. And here's everything I did. It instantiated the gun into the scene, positioned it to the player, added the vacuum functionality to be at the front of the gun so that it uses the gun as the origin of the vacuuming. And yeah, so now it still doesn't have a texture, so I told it to add the texture from the asset pack. It's going to create first get the info from the asset pack. It's creating a script to fix the gun material. It's going to execute that script. There you can see it updated. And now it's going to complete the task list, removing unused scripts. It set up all the emission, the metallic, the albedo, textures for the gun, and positioned it and lined it up properly with the gun. So you can see in the game scene how the gun is looking, the position and everything to the player. So now I'm giving it a new set of instructions. So I wanted to create using a line render attractor beam visual to show it actually filling in the objects. And when the objects are grabbed, I want them to have a bit of a wobble to show that they're floating. A dynamic lighting system implemented, and then add camera impact from Cinemachine to implement a physical kickback when picking up stuff. And then create a space window for when we create the scene later. So setting up the task list first, reading all the scripts. It installs a package for Cinemachine, creates scripts for the tasks it needs, like the trash wobble, creates a 5-step task list, gets the asset info, parents the gun to the player, creates script for the space window, updates the game manager script, checks for compiler errors, getting the info of the gun, changing the positioning of the gun, screenshot to check, changing the properties to in the correct positioning. You can see the gun change position to in front of the character. Create a script to disable the object so it doesn't interact. Updated the task list to say 6 out of 7 complete. Adding the tractor beam to the scene. Creating the observation window, removing non-needed scripts. Checks with the screenshot to see everything is done correctly. Now setting up the visual line renderer for the gun. And executed the script for it. Completed the task list. So everything it did is tractor beam visual. It created a tractor beam script using line renderer to show the tractor beam locking onto an object and pulling it in. Object feedback added a wobble when the object is being picked up. Dynamic station lighting is set up, and camera impact. So I wanted to just change the tractor beam a bit. It was too straight. I wanted it to be like a spiral beam in front of the player when shooting. Updating the scripts. Checks for compiler errors. And so it updated the line renderer in the script. And it will now be a spiral. And update the vacuum tool. Okay. So the nextly, I told it to. It had a problem where the cubes were now also jiggling on the floor, and they should only be doing it when picked up. Creates a task list to fix it. Updates the trash wobble script. Now it added a raycast to check if the object's on the ground. When it's not on the ground, it applies the wobble effect. And I think it misunderstood what I asked, so I told it needs to be on the object which is picked on the player's hands, so picked up. It updates the wobble script, the vacuum script, and it set hold boolean to check if it is being held by the player. Added that to the vacuum tool, so when it is snagged or picked up, it will set that hold to true so that it won't wobble. It will start wobbling when picked up. So I wanted it to adjust the area effect of the vacuum. It was too big, so I told it to make it a smaller cone area. Okay, so it reduced the angle of what it is affected and the pull radius. So I had a bit of a problem. For some reason it was pulling from the left side of my character instead of from in front. And then sometimes when I pick up stuff, it pushes me through the floor when I look up. Apologies about the camera. It seemed it did overheat. But here we are back. So we continue on with this. It is going to getting all the information of the nozzle, the direction it needs to shoot from. Updates the transform so that it does it correctly. Checks for the compiler errors. So what it did is update the tractor beam direction. It found issues where it was shooting to the left and updated the vacuum tool to ignore physics and collisions between the held object and the player, which was causing me to be pushed through the floor. Okay, for my next thing, I told it to set up walls, a ceiling, and I got textures generated using Nano Banana and Gemini 3 Pro and added them to the chat and the project and gave him the instructions to create the scene. Sets up the task list as the first step, gets a list of all the materials, creates materials for them, updates the spawning script. You can see updating that script to include the floors, the walls, and the ceilings. Created a game object in the scene called Station Architect. Applied the materials to objects. Creating a builder script to actually build the map. You can see the walls coming in, but we'll see it'll have issue. The back walls are not visible, so it added it as planes, and it should not be planes. Added a material fix script to fix the materials. Updated the task list. It finished it all. It's checking through screenshots to make sure everything is correct. It's fixing the skybox setup. That's not going to work as the skybox was never properly set up. It doesn't have a material. Updated the task list, checking for everything. It's everything it did. It set up the assets for the floors, created materials for them, implemented scripts to add them to the scene. So I told it to make the room bigger, make sure the textures are visible from all sides of the walls, and incorporate the window to create a more natural room with nooks and crannies, nooks and corners. Apply the skylight to make sure everything is in this room, such as the incinerator and cubes fit in it, and remove old objects. You can see the task list that's set up. It started with updating Station Architect script, new complex builder script to set up the scene, found compiler errors, went to fix that first, removes old unneeded scripts, generated the room as you can see above here, added the windows to the one side, updating the scripts a bit, screenshot to check if everything is set up correctly, and this is everything it done. So it set up the complex room generation, created the new script for that, created a setup layout with central area that's open, observation deck where you can see through the window, created an area where the incinerator is, changed the geometry so the walls are cubes so that the thickness and textures are visible. Added lighting, updated the ceiling, better object management so that it always spawns inside, and then removed all the old stuff, and so the skybox was still not set up. I gave it the texture it needed and told it to set up the skybox as the main task. I created a new script to set up the skybox, and there you can see it is set up. Not the highest quality one, but it does work. Created the material for it and made sure it was set up in scene. And there you go. Now it's properly set up. There you go. Final screenshot to check if it was done. So what it did, reassigned everything, made sure it was set up in scene, added material for the skybox. So now I added into the project meshes and textures for the trash objects, and it needs to set it up with that. Okay, did have a lot to process through. So here we go. Creates the task list. Sets all the objects up with the meshes that they need. Updates the trash setup script. Executes the script. Finish the task list, and this is everything it did. It analyzed the project. Made sure create new prefabs with all the objects added, and added that to your spawning logic. Apologies. So now I had a problem where they were falling through the scene, and that was causing, they were just falling out of the map. So I'm going to go and update the scripts to make sure it doesn't happen. Okay, so they found the problem. They had mesh colliders, but they didn't have a mesh assigned, causing them to fall to the floor. So updated that and removed the old trash cubes. Accidentally did all those changes during play mode, so it has to redo it now when it's not in play mode. Updating the scripts. Removing non-needed scripts. And it did the exact same thing as earlier, just not in play mode. That was my mistake. Okay, so now the issue with some of the objects not spawning properly in the new created map, so that I just need to check that so they don't fall through the floor again. And updating it, and just updating the spawn system so it spawns within the walls. And here you can see it adjusted the spawner, fix it to fixed height within the walls. So yes, so thank you for watching, and that is how you can create a similar game using Coplay and Unity. Thank you.